Cue the Imagine Dragons song. It is time to talk about The Exorcist Believer. Believer!
Well, sometimes that is better.
Before we get into this review, let's talk a little bit about the film first. Serving as the 6th installment in the Exorcist franchise and also a direct continuation to the original, The Exorcist Believer is directed by David Gordon Green and also written by Green as well as Peter Sattler. The story comes from Scott Teems, Danny McBride, and David Gordon Green as well. The film stars Leslie Odom Jr., Aaron Burr, Anne Dowd, the creepy lady from Hereditary, and of course, Ellen Burstyn, reprising her role of Chris McNeil from the original classic. A really interesting tidbit about this film is it was delayed from its Friday the 13th original release date to October 6th, pushed up a week due to the Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie. While the folks at Blumhouse may not be able to plan a requel trilogy correctly, they do understand one important principle about this planet. Taylor Swift is God. All hail Taylor. All hail Taylor. Universal and Peacock acquired distribution rights in 2021 for $400 million. So basically what that means is if this movie doesn't work and a bunch of people aren't fans of it, well, Blumhouse may be absolutely fucked. But something tells me this movie will still make money because of its title. A sequel to the film, titled The Exorcist Deceiver, is already planned to come out on April 18th of 2025. That film will immediately be followed by The Exorcist Wide Receiver just in time for football season in fall of 2026, as well as The Exorcist Golden Retriever, where a dog gets possessed by Pazuzu, coming out in 2027. Getting into a non-spoiler review, to nobody's shock, The Exorcist Believer is a needless and pointless sequel that does not need to exist. I really don't mind being so harsh on this movie because Blumhouse keeps rushing out these pointless sequels to fan favorite classic horror movies, and on top of that, they're rushing David Gordon Green to make these movies as fast as physically possible in time for a release, so they make more money. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but that's exactly what's happening here. David Gordon Green can make a good horror movie. Halloween 2018's a banger, but this is just not it, and it's a rushed product that you can tell all the way down to the editing. I will admit, The Exorcist Believer's strongest act is its first. It has a really intriguing beginning. I think that Leslie Odom Jr.'s character, Victor Fielding, is a pretty decent lead, and the guy gives a pretty good performance, but it's just nothing super exceptional that I haven't already seen in countless other exorcism films that have come out from the past 50 years, copying William Friedkin's classic. It's downright disgraceful to the 1973 film that this movie just copies other copies of the original film. I mean, to put that plainly, it's pathetic. The opening is intriguing and scary because it's relatable. Loved ones go missing in the woods. These parents are freaking out about it. Pretty good stuff. It's not bad. But the moment we get to the actual exorcism itself, it comes to a grinding, slow halt. One of the worst parts about this movie, though, is just all of the technical behind-the-scenes stuff. The editing and the way that certain scenes were shot is atrocious. I have seen fan films that look better than this movie. When the little girls are talking with the demon voice, 50% of the time, it's off. How do you make that mistake when you have a $30 million budget? The sound design in general is just pretty bad. There's a sequence like early on that I noticed and I kept noticing throughout the film. When Leslie Odom Jr.'s character walked in from one room to another, they used a sound clip from a different take, and it's obvious. You can hear that the sound was recorded farther away, and then immediately with his next line, it's the next take. I have seen YouTube videos and fan films with better sound design and editing than this film. There are characters that have overlapping conversation without purpose. This isn't Jaws where it's cool and edgy to do that. It's just pointless. Speaking of pointless, half the characters in this movie don't even really need to be there. There are plot lines and arcs in this that feel so rushed and forced. There is some bizarre commentary in this movie, and I don't really know what it's trying to say, but I don't feel like it's something good. And the worst sin that this movie commits is wasting the character of Chris McNeil. Ellen Burstyn does not do anything to further the plot in this movie, and it frustrates me. Halloween Ends was one thing considering what that did with its franchise, but this is downright disrespectful towards that original classic. All right, we're about to get into the spoiler section of this video, so if you do not want any spoilers for The Exorcist Believer, watch no further, but I do appreciate you for clicking on this video. Thank you very much. So just getting right into it, The Exorcist Believer failed to make me a believer because, oh my god, this is a pointless, needless, and slow as sequel. I am absolutely and 100% convinced that Blumhouse rushed this movie out in order to get it in time for the 50th anniversary so that they could sell tickets. Now see, if this was the first time that Blumhouse had done something like that, I wouldn't be making these accusations. But this is now the second time that I feel they have rushed the same filmmaker into making a movie that clearly was not finished. And I feel so bad for David Gordon Green because he's going to get all the flack for this movie when I really don't think he deserves it. I said a lot of shit about David Gordon Green in my Halloween Ends review last year, and I regret it, because doing a little more research, it seems like the studio is putting a lot of pressure on the guy to make movies as fast as physically possible. With that being said, I believe both Halloween Ends and this film suffered because they were in production for both movies at the same time. Nobody could do that shit. That's a crazy amount of pressure. I'm honestly just mad after seeing this film, because I really do like David Gordon Green. He made Halloween 2018. That's one of my favorite Halloween movies, and now you're forcing him to put garbage like this out because you're not giving him enough time to make an actual congruent film. Talking about the actual film a little more though, I will say that Leslie Odom Jr. does give a pretty good performance here in the first act, and I think there's a little bit of intrigue that's built around this father figure who has lost his daughter and is actively looking through the woods and all that. That's the best part of the film. Pretty intriguing stuff here and instantly relatable. Even Catherine's parents, who are a little too in-your-face shitty, I can kind of relate to. I get why they act the way that they do, but they're a little too in-your-face, hey, these are the bad guys. The movie really starts to fall apart once the girls get back to their houses after they've been possessed or whatever out in the woods. It turns into The Nun with some poorly executed jump scares that rarely land, except for that snake. God damn, that actually kind of got me. I want to know more about the snake. That's the thing I'm the most interested in. The second act really starts to fall apart, especially with the introduction of Ellen Burstyn, who's trying her best, admittedly, but with a script that doesn't even require her to be in it, which is such a shame. You're gonna bring back 90-year-old Ellen Burstyn to do nothing in this movie? Really? Chris McNeil comes back to just kind of hang out with Leslie Odom Jr. and tell him, hey, I went through the same thing a little while ago. I want to save my rant about Ellen Burstyn's character reprisal until the end of this video, so stick around. It's maybe the biggest point I want to make about the film. The editing is absolutely atrocious. There are sequences where two characters are having a conversation over each other, and it comes off as this was the first take and we just didn't have enough time to do another one. It's not like in Jaws where Brody is having this super important conversation over the phone while some shit is happening in the background. That's supposed to build up the chaos in his life a little bit. It has a point to it, but the sequence where both of the parents are just talking over each other is nonsensical. Once again, we want to build up chaos, but I can't understand what either characters are saying. What's great about that sequence in Jaws is I can pick up on what both characters are saying at different points. It's just choreographed a little better, where this is simply not. The sound design is also notably bad, with most of the lip syncing being off at least half the time. They had a demon voice for the girl characters while they're possessed, and it's off 50% of the time. It's shockingly bad. I cannot believe they had a $30 million budget for this movie. They would have fooled me. By the time you get to the seance, it turns into absolute and utter nonsense, where just a bunch of crazy, scary images are blasting you in the face and don't really serve any purpose or point. I love really gross and weird imagery if it serves the movie and the story you're trying to tell. If you just show me a bunch of crazy practical effects or like digital shit, that doesn't mean anything. The ending of this movie shows me a traumatic death, but because I never built up any rapport with this character, not really, we only got to meet her like once or twice, I just didn't care. There was no emotional connection to Catherine. The majority of the time she's on screen, she's possessed. It completely misses what William Friedkin's classic did so well, spending so much time with Reagan before she even turns into a monster, because she's a sweet little girl at heart, but then she turns into Pazuzu, spitting up green puke and all that. It's upsetting because you spent so much time with her and her mom having this sweet, wholesome relationship. You really only get that in one scene with Victor and Angela. You don't get that with Catherine and her parents. You just don't care when that happens at the end of the film. Like, did they even watch the 1973 film? I doubt it. I also feel as if there was a lot of characters that just served the same purpose in this film that didn't all need to be there. You could have probably just had 4 characters and then the 2 possessed girls, or, you know, maybe just not have 2 possessed girls. It's the Star Wars Episode 7 argument all over again. Instead of having a Death Star the size of a moon, let's have one the size of a planet that's even big and destroys even more planets. Instead of 1 possessed little girl, we're gonna have 2 of them. No, that doesn't make it better. They're just overcomplicating and overthinking a very simple setup to a good movie. The commentary in this movie is also very bizarre. I'm really not sure what it's trying to say because it's simply undercooked. There's talk on some really controversial subjects like abortion and religion that I really don't know what this movie is trying to say because it's so messy. That's not me accusing it of one thing or the other, by the way. That's just me genuinely confused as to what the this movie is trying to say about either of those topics. And poor, sweet Ellen Burstyn just got wasted in this movie, as well as Linda Blair. One of the big reasons I even wanted to see this movie was just to see what they would do with the character of Chris McNeil, who does not serve the plot at all. She gets attacked by Catherine and exits this movie pretty much. By the way, her getting her eyes stabbed by that little girl, it just feels a little disrespectful to me. And hear me out on this one, because this is maybe a hot take from me. I loved that in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, we had the character of Sally Hardesty come back, played by a different actress, admittedly, but it was like, okay, that's cool, whatever. It didn't really serve the movie at all, but it was like kind of shocking to see her die. That feels very Texas Chainsaw Massacre to me, because that's a slasher franchise. It's also a franchise known for its super grisly and upsetting kills, so why not kill this final girl character that got away in the original film? Texas Chainsaw Massacre is no Scream, where we have sacred characters that you simply can't kill. No, no, no. When Sally Hardesty gets away in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, I feel like she might have gotten the worst fate out of anybody in that movie. She is traumatized for life after all of that shit, literally screaming and clinging to the back of a truck. It's really fucked up that they killed her in that movie, and I think it just adds to it in a lot of ways, even if the portrayal wasn't super necessary to that movie. In this film, Ellen Burstyn's character does not do anything to further the plot, and then they viciously maim her in a way that, once again, doesn't serve the plot. Like, listen, at least the Sally Hardesty stuff was trying to be commentary on Laurie Strode's character from like Halloween 2018. She even shares some of her lines. It's pretty obvious what they're trying to do there. I don't even think they succeed that well at it in the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but like, they had a reason to bring her back, at least. I am failing to see why they would bring Chris McNeil back except for nostalgia and to put butts in seats to make more money. Same thing with Linda Blair. Why does she come back at the end of the movie? We literally were told earlier on in the film that Linda Blair's character, Reagan McNeil, never wanted to talk to her mother again. So why the f did she come back? Are we going to explain that in The Exorcist Deceiver? Well, I don't really care. I really hope that Ellen Burstyn made a lot of money doing that. Despite its intriguing opening, The Exorcist Believer completely fails at reinventing this franchise and just does the absolute most generic thing it possibly could have. I give it a 1 out of 10. I think a lot of us knew that this was going to be bad, but this is just downright disrespectful. Now, some of you out there might have really enjoyed The Exorcist Believer, and to that I say I respect your opinion. But as a huge fan of the 1973 classic, I feel underwhelmed and disappointed by this brand new entry. How do you guys feel about the film though? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching my review of The Exorcist Believer. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content in the future. Please consider supporting this page on Patreon by clicking on the link in the description below. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all. Peace!